why are there 4 Imams? Why them? Why not others? Those 4 Imams came in an era after the first 3 generations, and some of them were of the end of the 3rd generation, and some of them came after, where knowledge began to get written down and systematized. Okay? They began to systematize their knowledge, and they began to write it down, and these were the leaders in that field. In the realm of, let's say, technology. Technology generally came about, computers and that type of tech came out at a certain time. You ended up with certain leaders. And today you can count the people who make computers on your hands. You're either going to get an HP, you're going to get a Sony, you're going to get a Mac, you're going to get whatever else, Samsung. It's not 100 people who make computers. At a certain point, okay, they take up the whole market, and there's very hard for anyone to enter the market. So at the beginning of a certain era, there come a lot of people who do it, but eventually some dominate over others. And at that time, you could say there were 11. That span of 100, 200 years, there were 11 madhabs. 11. 4 of them survived. 7 of them just died out. They didn't have enough followers, and their books are there, but we don't revive them because we need certainty. We don't know who transcribed those books. We don't know if there are mistakes in the books. The madhab must be living. So the question of why are there 4, simply put it, these were the first to document and codify knowledge and put it all in one methodology. And there were many, but not all of them survived. Just like many people come into any industry and make cars. You know how many car companies there were in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s? But not all of them survived. And you end up with a handful of car companies. It's very hard to get into that market. So now that's how we end up with the 4 schools and the 4 madhabs. As we said earlier, we talked about why madhabs exist. It's because of how they interpret the dhanni texts, the equivocal or speculative texts. And we talked about how the new matters come about. And we talked about how they manage hadith. These are the reasons why madhabs exist. Now let me give you a simple example of how the 4 madhabs differ with one another. And this isn't exhaustive by any means, but it'll give you a good idea. First of all, the difference, the opinion of Abu Hanifa regarding the Quran and the Sunnah is that the Quran is a superior source to the Sunnah. It's a superior source to the Sunnah. The Ahl Hadith, which ends up being the Maliki school, the Shafii school, and the Hanbali school, even though Ahmad was from Iraq, they say, no. The Quran and Sunnah are absolutely equal sources. Now, between Malik and Shafii, they differed on within the Sunnah, what is the strongest type of Sunnah. They both agreed that the sound hadith that has many, many chains is the number 1 source. They differed now on number 2. Malik said that the actions of the scholars of Medina and their rulings cannot possibly be wrong. It is equivalent with the first layer, what's called mutawazir, widespread. Shafii said no. So you can't say that. And he prefers the solitary hadith. Solitary means came down in one chain. Prefers that over Malik's opinion about the scholars of Medina. Malik's logic was that A, this is what his teachers were doing. And B, that it's impossible for a whole generation of scholars that close to the Prophet and the companions to have made a mistake. It's impossible. They 1,000 from 1,000, as Rabi'atul Ra'i said. So that's a difference between one of the major differences between Malik and Shafii. What about Imam Ahmad? Imam Ahmad has a very unique take on this, and he holds all of it to be sunnah. And every statement of a companion, Ahmad, out of piety and honoring the companions, did not want to judge between them. all of that would be sunnah. That's why whenever you hear someone talk about Hanbali school, they will say in one of the opinions of the Hanbali school, because Imam Ahmad honored and respected every opinion of a companion. And he held all of that to be sunnah. And Imam Ahmad honored hadith so much, he preferred a solitary hadith, even a not so strong hadith, over analogy. Whereas none of the other three before him would do that. If the report was not solid enough to make law upon, they prefer analogy over the weak hadith. That's a basic summary on why we ended up with 4 madhabs and how these 4 differ with one another.